Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VLGA Connect. Hang on, you're not Chris Eddy.
I'm not Chris Eddy, Mr. Cooper. Hello, I'm Allison Watt. Nice to see you again.
Oh, thank you for acknowledging my powers of observation. This should be fun, Allison.
It should be. I'm looking forward to it, Steve.
Terrific.
Welcome to VLGA Connect. My name is Catherine Arndt and I'm the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. I hope you enjoy today's Connect episode brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hello again and welcome to this week's edition of the VLGA Connect Governance Update with thanks to our good friends at Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. And as we've touched on just prior to the introduction, Chris Eddy is away on international assignment and we've got Allison Watt here today. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, no, I thought you were an obvious choice to pick up a couple of these sessions while Chris is away because, and you might like to explain to some of our listeners who may not know you, what your background is that might qualify you for talking about this this governance topic.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Well, as you can probably tell by the colour of my hair, I have been around for a while. Been around the block a few times in local government, so about 25 years, I think, in total. So not quite as much as you, but a few years. I've worked at a number of councils during that time: Brimbank, Nillumbik, Moonee Valley a couple of times, a couple of stints at Moonee Valley, and more recently at Macedon Ranges. So I've worked in governance roles and also in comms roles, as I'm a journalist by trade. And so my foray into local government was in the comms space. And then, as you often do with governance, you inherit governance along the journey. So I did inherit governance along the way.
Sorry, Alison, we've got a couple of stories that we're going to unpack, so your journalistic prowess might come to the fore there, and presumably that gives you a different lens through which we look at these issues.
Sure.
Okay, so let's go. Actually, one thing that we possibly should have mentioned on weeks gone by, and you and I have talked about it during the week, that topic about CEO side hustles. What's brought that to the fore?
Oh, look, I receive, I'm on LinkedIn, as most people are, and the CEO of Whittlesea, Craig Lloyd, many viewers might know, is a very accomplished country and western singer, and he has released a single which recently won an award, I think. I had to listen to it, and it's actually very good. It's called Take the Wheel. You can have a listen through Spotify or your preferred application. And I think Craig's actually heading to the Country Music Festival in Tamworth.
Is he? I didn't know the Tamworth bit. And I was a bit like you. I just searched Craig on Spotify and the song came up, and actually it is pretty good, isn't it?
It is. It's great. It's great. So good on him. That's a great. And then of course that got us having the discussion about CEO side hustles and the fact that, of course, you know, although CEOs are extremely busy people and put in a lot of hours into their jobs, they do have hobbies and interests and a bit of work-life balance. And I thought that it might be an interesting topic to talk about. Well,
people might want to actually make a comment on known and respectable CEO side hustles. Like I know your former CEO, Bill Forrest, who was your CEO at Nillumbik, Allison, was an accomplished and remains an accomplished violinist.
He is and was and is a very accomplished violinist, Bill, and he would never pass up an opportunity to whip out his violin and put on a bit of a performance. And you know, the staff who worked under him at Nillumbik will remember that there was always an end of year staff review, and Bill never let anyone, including his exec team, get away with not taking part in that review. And so there was always lots of hilarity at the end of the year. But he's an amazing violin player, Bill, and I think he's currently on the board of the Melbourne Chamber Orchestra. Not sure. But one thing that I do remember about Bill and his violin playing was the day after the Black Saturday bushfires, which of course decimated the Merri-bek community. And Bill got in the car with his violin and drove up and just stood in the main street of Hurstbridge and played the violin. It was, quite amazing. Yeah.
What a beautiful thing to do. And I know
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the fact, and probably quite different hobbies that a couple of former CEOs. So Michael Tudball, the former CEO at South Gippsland, and I see on Instagram, Michael posts his bike rides. He goes out for hours, and these clever little maps pop up saying where he's been,
yes.
Similar to your hobbies. And Margaret Abbey, who was at Murrindindi, was quite accomplished in some sort of handcraft, Alison.
It was lace making. So Margaret, when she left Murrindindi a few years back, she was actually involved in lace making at an international level, and she was sort of heading overseas to. I think she was on the committee for lace making at an international level. So that was a very interesting side hustle. But I think we'd be interested in hearing from other CEOs about their side hustles. I think it's an interesting little topic.
Well, and it sort of is important to encourage people to have work-life balance, Alison. So, and you're back in a couple of weeks' time. So, people should get those in. Now, let's move on to some local government matters, though. City of Greater Geelong, and congratulations to the Cats. I feel warm and fuzzy about that as any other any other team other than my own, which I'm not going to mention. They did a very quick road naming, Alison.
They did. I was watching the news on Sunday night and was quite surprised to see the Mayor of Geelong announce the renaming of the main street as Premiership Way, complete with the street sign. And I thought to myself, gee, that didn't take long. I wonder if they went through the geographic place names process and the required community consultation to get that up and running in 24 hours. But of course, it's only temporary and for the media, shall we say.
Knowing full well, you wondered if, knowing full well that they hadn't. But interesting, and props to the City of Greater Geelong, because obviously the council's affected when a local team is going to win a premiership like that, need to do their planning months out, as evidenced by a series of road closures in Geelong on the Saturday night. And presumably, as part of that planning, the announcement of a temporary renaming was part of that.
Yes. And it's sort of, I was at the City of Moonee Valley the year that Essendon won a premiership, Steve. Not sure quite what year that was, but there was also lots of involvement from the council at that level. I think, we had a parade down Puckle Street for the players at that stage. It was pouring rain. We had to sort of buy every umbrella that we could find, but a lot of work goes into those community events. Let
me say, Alison, that sounds like a fabulous event that should have been celebrated. And
Are you an Essendon supporter?
If you wouldn't mind, thank you. Can we keep going?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, we'll leave that one right there. Chris and I have talked about the speaking of renamings, the renaming of the former Moreland City Council as Merri-bek, and there's been news on that this week, Alison.
I guess the news is that it is official, and there was on Monday some unveiling of signage, not so much branding, but certainly signage and the names of the signs at the Coburg Town Hall, and the other sort of soft applications, website and social media branding and that sort of thing. The things that are pretty quick and easy to do have all changed, but as we know, the sort of more long term, the hardware, the street signs and the pavilions and parks and that sort of thing will take a bit of time. But they've done a pretty slick rollout, and in a short space of time. Yeah.
High praise from a former communications manager. I could see the cogs kind of ticking as to how you would approach the task with the soft, easy wins and then rolling out the hardware.
It's a massive task, not an easy one, but the amount that they've been able to do in a very short space of time has been quite amazing.
props to the Mayor, Mark Riley, and to CEO Kathy Henderson and the team
absolutely.
at now Merri-bek, which is just a terrific piece of work that they've done. Moving to another matter, Alison, and we'll just touch on this because I suspect Tony Rownick and I next week might dig a bit deeper. But what do we know about waste charges for Air BnBs in the Dorset Council in Tasmania?
Yes, you sent me through the link to this this story, Steve. So this Tasmanian Council, because it cannot get rate revenue from Airbnbs because they are not deemed commercial premises, has decided to increase the waste charge on those premises by about $2,000. So the waste charge is increased from $900 to over $3,000. And so there's been a bit of debate in the media down there around the legality of that, which I think that you will unpack that with Tony when you speak next week.
I'm expecting we will have a conversation around the fairness. You made an interesting comment, though, Alison, around the consultation process associated with that decision by the council.
Or lack thereof. Yes, an interesting comment. I think it was from the Mayor, or I'm just not quite sure who the comment was from, around the lack of consultation, which was, well, we didn't do any consultation because we know that people wouldn't have liked it, so we just didn't think that there was any point. I'm not sure that that's consistent with perhaps the Act or any other sort of natural justice processes.
Sort of generally accepted good governance practices. And we know that the Ombudsman, over a couple of matters, including some EPA decisions regarding waste spoil around Bulla, the Ombudsman had commented previously that of the importance of consultation, even when you think you know what the answer is going to be. So, we'll watch this with interest. And as I said, I think Tony and I will come back to it. Council of Conduct's rearing its head, Alison. The Gannawarra Council meeting, I know a lot of people have spoken to me over the last week or so regarding the debate on the referral of a matter to a Council of Conduct panel.
Yes, Steve, the footage of that council meeting is available online if people haven't seen it yet, but certainly I think a difficult council meeting, perhaps for the chair, in relation to where some of the debate went and how to handle some of the comments that were made by councillors. And I think the crux of the matter is that the only decision that council was being asked to make was to refer the matter to a conduct panel. It wasn't being asked to comment on the incident or the matter which has triggered the referral to the conduct panel. So a bit of a tricky one up there.
Yeah, look, it was. And for those that haven't seen it, I suppose you're quite right. It's not the role of the council to determine innocence or guilt, but to decide, I suppose, whether the matter in the framework of the misconduct under the Act and the Code of Conduct is serious enough to refer to a conduct panel. One of the councillors made a comment in relation to the CEO, and I think to your point, it seemed to me that the Mayor slipped up because he not only pulled the councillor up as soon as the CEO was mentioned, but then when challenged said, I know where you're going with this. So what that led to was a couple of councillors going back at the Mayor about him being a mind reader. And really sort of, I guess, a pattern of dissent in the chair, Alison.
Yes, I think unfortunately the chair did call out a councillor for something that he thought that he might say, that in fact wasn't said, although it potentially could have gone that way, and maybe he was trying to nip it in the bud. But you certainly can't, as a chair, preempt what someone might say and then act before something's been said.
I don't know, Alison. I think, if a councillor felt aggrieved in a call by the chair, they could make a motion of dissent. Otherwise, generally speaking, it's best just to let the matter lie and for the meeting to proceed.
Indeed, but you and I probably both know from years of experience at council meetings and not only documenting or minuting meetings, but providing advice to the chair, that motions of dissent are often very messy and tricky for elected folk to navigate.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny how often the governance rule will say it's not meant as a motion of no confidence in the chair, but it seems that it is. My take, I guess, is, and it was interesting, I was reflecting on this during the week, Alison, that I think for my first 30 years in local government, I never saw one. I thought it was just one of those things that was out there, but they seem to be more common, which probably is a reflection on, I guess, a decline in standards in council meetings, perhaps.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I've seen perhaps a couple, and they're both pretty messy and pretty nasty, and not something that I would want to go through again or wish any councillors to go through again. They need to be handled very carefully.
Yeah, and it really does take a skillful mayor to kind of navigate that, to bring it to the issue at hand, which is the motion of dissent, to deal with the outcome of that, and then one way or the other to move on without any ongoing rancor. Let's move on then. What about interesting and sort of distantly related situation during the week at Wyndham, as reported by The Age, Alison?
This has been reported and is a matter of public record, and there was a decision, a motion at the council meeting at Wyndham on Tuesday night, where a councillor who is the subject of a bullying allegation put forward a motion to have the report, a confidential report that deals with that allegation, that be made available to that councillor's fellow councillors. This has been ongoing for a while. This report has been kept confidential. The councillor against whom the allegations is being made has said, and the motion was passed, that she was happy for her fellow councillors to get a copy of that, and I think she's said publicly that she's doesn't believe that she's done anything wrong and is keen to clear her name. This
was in response to a notice of motion by another councillor to escalate the matter to a conduct panel, as I recall, Alison. And I thought that was an interesting one too, that and in that sense, well done to that councillor concerned for that notion of putting the matter out in the open and allowing it to be dealt with in the process, rather than, as we were talking about before, kind of arguing the point before it even got there. Just a sidebar, Alison, that Chris and I spoke previously about governance rules at Yarra, and that has continued to draw media attention. And I'll come back to the quality of journalism in a minute, but it is a reminder that I did get a note from Livia Benazzi, the CEO at Murrumbidgee, and thanks for that, Livia. Let me know if I verbaled you unfairly, but Livia made the point we were talking previously about Borbor's governance rules allowing for, quite deliberately, for remote access to the council meeting for questioners from the public. And Livia made the point that the governance rules, I should say, old habits, still need to actually accommodate those who might have poor internet connection, or for one reason or another might not be comfortable to ask the questions via the web. And good point, I think. So, Livia, thanks for that feedback. But on the topic of journalism, there was an interesting story from Bega Valley on the ABC News Services, Alison, with the heading on the link that I've got says, Bega Valley Mayor slams developer after incompetence claim. So that certainly got my attention. Yeah,
an interesting story, Steve, where a developer is clearly frustrated by the timeliness of the processing of his applications, and has had a fair whack at council staff. Perhaps unfairly, I would have thought. If you read the article, a lot of those councils are still dealing with the aftermath of bushfire planning applications and so forth. And, we know that in rural councils, there are not big numbers of planners and so forth. So I think the criticism was a little bit unwarranted, but the mayor did have something to say about it.
And good on the mayor, and good on the ABC, I thought, for disclosing both sides of the story, Alison, because the mayor went back and said, well, hang on, this developer there are numerous occasions where unapproved works have proceeded, and B, the works haven't ceased when notices to cease have been issued. So it would appear that the project plan might not have taken appropriate notice of getting the approvals in place before the work got started.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, it comes back to balance in journalism here, I think. And as you said, this one was a good example where there was both sides of the story. But if we think, if I think back to the debate around the governance rules at Yarra, and I was actually sort of in the car listening to Drive Talkback Radio, where there was, lots of sort of opining about how terrible it was that residents had to lodge questions in advance, and, some discussion with the local residents association and so forth. But there wasn't a right of reply or an opportunity for the council to respond to those. And, I was kind of driving down the highway yelling at the radio, as I often do, because I think, local government's always been easy fodder for some people in the media, and it's part of the reason why sometimes we get a bad name.
And isn't that the point, Alison, that I don't think anyone's saying to the media, don't scrutinise local government, because of course it's a really critical role for the Fourth Estate. But maybe as people involved in councils, what we should insist on is that both sides of the story are fairly given. Yeah,
and probably I think a lack of research too from some of these media outlets, and it's very easy to pluck things from social media and then run it as a story without doing the due diligence. And when I was in journalism a very long time ago, Steve, I won't say how long ago, but you had to. It was pre-internet where you could just look things up, and you had to do your research and make sure that your facts were correct. And so, if we use the governance rules at Yarra example, if the producer of that program had had a look at, say, the governance rules of 5 or 10 other councils, they would see pretty similar provisions in their governance rules around how to manage public question time. So I get frustrated at the lack of due diligence and research.
Sort of basic research. And I suppose to that point, we're also victims of the fact that there are less journalists. They are relying, as you say, on the information that they receive, and often they're just measured on clicks rather than the quality of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Alison, it's been a joy to speak this week. Just a couple of notes from some of our fellow peak organisations. The MAV conference is coming up on the 13th of October. The LG Pro Women's Network dinner on the 9th of November, as you say, always a very popular event. So we've got a VLGA live event coming up on the 28th of October in regard to the role of mayor. So keep an eye out for that. Registration to be open for that next week. But I think all it goes to say now is to Allison Watt, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it, Steve.
That's terrific.
Maybe you'll invite me back.
Well,
maybe not.
We'll look at the reviews, and I'm sure they'll be fine. They'll be better about you than me. And of course, thanks again to our good friends at Hunt and Hunt. And with luck, I'll be speaking next week with Tony Rounick at the offices of Hunt and Hunt. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye, everyone.